Picture this, a city that feels nothing like itself. Pavements freshly painted, streets sealed off, soldiers at every corner, eyes scanning, radios crackling, and over everything, that rare electric silence that only settles when history is about to be made. That is Islamabad today. But 4,000 kilometers away, in the Persian Gulf, there's a different kind of silence. Not the silence of anticipation, the silence of paralysis. Over 400 oil tankers sit motionless in the water, engines idling, crews waiting, billions of dollars of cargo going nowhere. The narrow strip of the ocean that keeps the world's lights on, its cars moving, and its economies breathing is effectively closed. Two silences, two crises, one story. And today, we are going to tell them both. To understand this weekend, you have to go back exactly 6 weeks ago. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched coordinated military strikes against Iran. The strikes killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and in one day, a conflict that had been simmering for decades exploded. What followed was not just a war between two countries, it became a war that swallowed a region. Thousands of people killed across multiple countries, Iran attacking its Gulf neighbors, and the world's most critical energy corridor thrown into chaos. And then, the move that shook every economy on earth, Iran shut the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil and gas normally passes through that 21-mile-wide waterway every single day. When Tehran moved to close it, except to ships from countries that had negotiated personal deals with Iran, global markets went into a frenzy. Oil prices hit record highs, fuel costs surged 40%, economies from Nairobi to New York felt the pain at the pump. The world had not seen anything like this, and the world was desperate for it to stop. However, a few days ago, something remarkable happened. Washington and Tehran, two governments that had been bombing and counter-striking for 6 weeks, agreed to a Pakistan-brokered 2-week ceasefire. The reaction was instant. Oil prices plunged, stock markets soared, people exhaled. And then, reality arrived, as it always does. The ceasefire announcement sent oil tumbling, but within days, it was creeping back towards $100 a barrel. Because the markets had not done the math, but the diplomats hadn't finished yet. A ceasefire on paper doesn't automatically reopen a strait. It doesn't automatically move 400 stranded tankers, and it doesn't automatically bring fuel prices back down. And those tankers, they're still sitting there, still waiting. The world declared a pause, but the crisis didn't get the memo. Here is the part of the story that is not making enough headlines as it should. The Strait of Hormuz may be officially reopening for business. President Trump has said it publicly more than once. But here's what shipping company executives are actually saying. They are not moving, not yet, maybe not for months. Hapag-Lloyd, the fifth largest shipping company in the world, has 6 container ships trapped in the strait right now, and they are keeping them exactly where they are. Their spokesman said it plainly, safety is the top priority, and right now the risk is still too high. Why? Because a ceasefire is not the same thing as a green light. Shipping companies say they have received, quote, no information on how to safely transit the strait. They are not in contact with Iranian authorities, no protocol, no schedule, no guarantee. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, still controls the waterway, and the IRGC has not laid out a plan for safe passage. One industry veteran put it perfectly, shippers want explicit approval from the people that may do you harm. You don't just sail through the most militarized shipping lane on earth because a politician says it's fine. You wait until the people with the guns say it's fine, and those people haven't spoken yet. Let's make this real for a moment. Martin Salgado is a seafarer. He has been stuck on board his company's oil tanker in the Persian Gulf since late February. As of Thursday, he was still there, still waiting, weeks away from his family in the middle of a geopolitical standoff he did not start and cannot end. He is one of the thousands of crew members on hundreds of vessels, all in the same position, waiting for someone somewhere to give them permission to move. And while they wait, the costs pile, not just for them, for all of us. Before this war, more than 100 cargo ships moved through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That number has collapsed, and the knock-on effects are everywhere. Average gas prices in the United States are up to 40% since the war began. Getting back to a pre-war $3 gallon is, analysts say, a long way off. Even if oil started flowing freely tomorrow, it takes days for a single tanker to load, transit, and deliver its cargo. You cannot just flip a switch. One analyst told CNN this week, if this continues for another week or two, the consequences, not just for energy prices, but for the whole economy, are dire. Now, I want to stop here for just a second and talk to you directly, because I think there's a question a lot of people are asking right now that the news isn't answering clearly enough. And that question is, if there's a ceasefire, why is nothing actually better yet? Why are the gas prices still rising? Why are the ships still stuck? Why does the world feel like it's holding its breath even after a deal was supposedly reached? Drop that question in the comments. Tell me what you're feeling about this, because the answer, and we're getting into it, is more complicated than most headlines are letting on. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the good time, because this story is moving fast and we're going to stay on top of it for you. Now back to Islamabad, because what happens in that hotel this weekend may be the only thing that can actually unlock those stranded tankers. Pakistan's capital did not become the venue of these talks by accident. Islamabad earned this moment quietly, patiently, over years of positioning itself as a country that can talk to everyone. It shares a 900 kilometers border with Iran. It hosts the world's second largest Shia Muslim population. It has no American military base on its soil, a detail that matters enormously to Tehran, which views every country hosting US troops as automatically compromised. And yet Pakistan has been a designated major non-NATO ally of the United States since 2004. It is, in the language of diplomacy, a rare thing, a country that both sides trust enough to sit still in. The Serena Hotel, nestled in Islamabad's high-security red zone next to the foreign minister, has been emptied out for the weekend. Guests removed, security tightened, public holidays declared for April 9th and 10th across the capital. A 30-member American security detail has already landed. The last US vice president to visit Pakistan was Joe Biden in January 2011, 15 years ago. That JD Vance is coming now to a country where the US doesn't even have a confirmed ambassador tells you everything about how seriously Washington is treating this moment. Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, has reportedly been on the phone constantly with leaders from both Washington and Tehran during these weeks of back-channel diplomacy. This didn't happen by chance, it was constructed brick by brick through trust. Now, let's talk about who is actually sitting across from who, because the names in this room carry enormous weight. Leading the American side, Vice President JD Vance, flanked by Trump top's envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner. Now, Iranian officials are deeply skeptical of Witkoff and Kushner, and their skepticism is not baseless. Back in February, while American envoys were sitting at a negotiating table in Muscat and Geneva, US warplanes were simultaneously bombing Iran. That is not a small thing to forgive. You don't easily shake the hand of someone who has been talking to you while attacking you. Vance, however, is a different calculation. He has been measured in his public statements about prolonged US military involvement in the Middle East. He is seen as a potential contender for the 2028 presidential race, someone with a personal political interest in being the man who helped end a war, not the man who deepened one. Iranian officials see him as a more open, and in diplomacy, perception is often as powerful as reality. On the Iranian side, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher himself, a former IRGC commander, and Foreign Minister Abbas represent. Whether any current IRGC representative joins the talks remains unclear, given that it is the IRGC controlling the Strait of Hormuz. That absence, if it happens, will be telling. The two sides will not share a room. They will sit in separate spaces while Pakistani officials carry messages between them. Shuttle diplomacy is the most literal physical sense. In a hotel in the foothills of Margala Hills, with the fate of the global economy part of what's on the table. So what are they actually trying to agree on? Iran has arrived with a 10-point peace proposal. Among its demands, Iranian oversight over the Strait of Hormuz, the full withdrawal of US combat forces from the Middle East, a halt to military operations against Tehran's allied armed groups. These are not small asks. These are foundational demands from a country that believes it holds significant leverage because it does. It controls the tap on 20% of the world's oil. And then there is the toll. Iran's IRGC has reportedly been charging ships up to $2 million per tanker just transit the strait. Payment, and this is remarkable, accepted only in Chinese yuan or cryptocurrencies, bypassing the dollar-based financial system entirely, bypassing US sanctions. Even President Trump floated a similar idea in a television interview, suggesting a joint toll venture with Iran, country he had threatened to end just one day earlier. The United States, meanwhile, insists that Iran must surrender its stockpile of enriched uranium, a demand the United States called non-negotiable. Iran has not officially accepted the condition. And then there is Lebanon, the one that keeps bleeding into every room. Just days before these talks, Israel launched its most intense bombing campaign on Lebanon since the war began, killing more than 200 people in a single day. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas warned Tehran could abandon the ceasefire entirely. The US said Lebanon was never part of the ceasefire terms. A former Pakistani diplomat told Al Jazeera this week the atmosphere has been poisoned before a single word was spoken in Islamabad. Israel, analysts say, has every incentive to keep this war going, and very little reason to sit quietly while the US and Iran find an exit ramp that doesn't include it. Here is where these two stories, Islamabad and the Strait of Hormuz, lock together like two pieces of the same puzzle, because the ships aren't just waiting for a ceasefire, they're waiting for a signal from Iran's IRGC that it is safe to move. And that signal will only come if these talks produce something something real, a genuine framework, a durable understanding, something that gives Tehran a reason to open the valve again. A market analyst put a number on it this week. She said it will take up to 6 months to get ship traffic back where it was before the war. 6 months. That is not a short-term disruption. That is a structural economic wound. Over 100 vessels moved through the strait daily before the war. Right now, according to tracking data, just 2 oil of gas tankers have transited since the ceasefire was announced. 2. And here's the kicker. It's not just about getting ship out. Empty tankers need to get into the strait to load up the oil that has been sitting trapped in storage for weeks. That entire process takes days per ship. Then multiply it by the thousands of vessels back up in the queue. The math is staggering. Flexport's president told CNN that oil tankers and vessels of Chinese origin will likely be the first to test these waters because China is Iran's closest major ally. Everyone else for now is watching and waiting, letting others go first. It is diplomacy at sea, cautious, slow, and expensive. Nobody is walking out of Islamabad this weekend with a signed peace treaty. Let's be clear about that. The mistrust between these parties runs too deep. The gaps between their positions are too wide, and the shadow of Israel still bombing Lebanon hangs too heavily over every conversation. But something more modest and arguably more important will still happen. Former Pakistani Ambassador Masood Ali described it well. Both sides, he said, are showing signs of fatigue, and fatigue in geopolitics is often the beginning of something better. A modicum of agreement on the nuclear issue, a multilateral understanding to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. It's possible, not guaranteed, but possible. Washington-based analyst Sakan was blunt in her assessment. Trust is the biggest obstacle. Both sides are still trying to prove they won, but if the ceasefire holds, and if these 2 delegations actually sit through the weekend of talks without walking out, that alone, she said, will be the most important thing. The key question, the one that all of this hinges on, is whether the United States will put pressure on Israel to stop bombing Lebanon, because every previous round of negotiations has been destroyed not by diplomats but by bombs, and these bombs every time have come from the same place. And if Trump can actually do that, if he can tame Israel long enough for these talks to breathe, analysts say he could chalk it up as one of the most significant diplomatic wins of his presidency. A man who threatened to end Iran's civilization one day and the next broke at the beginning of its peace. Thinking about what all this means on a human level, a seafarer named Martin is still stuck on a tanker somewhere in the Persian Gulf waiting to go home. A family in Nairobi is paying more fuel than they ever did. A small business owner in Ohio is watching the gas prices on her delivery routes climb every week, eating into margins she cannot afford to lose. Thousands of people across Lebanon are burying their dead. Thousands more across Iran, Israel, and the wider region are trying to understand how the world that existed before February 28th became the world that exists now. All of it connects. The talks in Islamabad, the tanker in the Gulf, the bombs over Lebanon, the price at your nearest fuel station. It's one story with one choke point, one strait, and one weekend of talks that the entire world is watching. Will Islamabad hold? Will the ceasefire survive Israel's ambitions? Will the IRGC finally issue the order that lets those hundreds of tankers move again? Will JD Vance fly home with something real in his hands, or walk away from a process that was already breaking before it began? We don't know yet. Nobody does. But we'll be here, tracking every development, every leak, every shift in the room, and bringing it to you as it happens. If you found this valuable, share it. The people in your circle deserve to understand what is actually happening here, beyond the headline, beyond the noise. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave your thoughts below, and we'll see you in the next one, because this story is far from over.